This is the rectangle tool. So again, we'll pick a plane, sketch on it, select the tool. By default, we have the corner rectangle tool selected. So the first corner that we dropped, that I just dropped on the origin there, creates the first corner of the rectangle. And what it wants me to do now is when I click, I'll define the opposite corner of the rectangle. So the one at diagonal opposite to the first one. So I can drop that there. And as you can see, by default it puts the relations in to hold these lines horizontal for the top and bottom lines and vertical for the two lines on either side, which means it'll always be aligned to the base planes. Here are some of the base planes. Here's the one that we're sketching on, here's the top one, here's the right one. So keeps it horizontal and vertical, and then obviously you put dimensions in, or you'd lock that down to the geometry to ensure that it was fully defined. Next option in the rectangle drop down list there is the center rectangle, and again the icon gives us some pretty good clues on how this is going to be created. You can see on the icon here it's got a 1 near the center point and a 2 near the point on the corner. So the first point that we drop is going to be the center of the rectangle, and the second point is going to be one of the corners. So it can be any corner, it doesn't have to be the one in the icon. So we drop the second corner, and as you can see it's put this construction geometry in, this dashed geometry, which won't be used to create the solid geometry in the feature, but it is there to ensure that this rectangle stays central about that point. So in my case it's central about the origin, because I dropped that point on the origin. So that can be quite useful if you want the centre of this shape to remain centred around a certain point. And again, you put dimensions in this, you'd ensure that it was fully defined before you moved on to using it to create some geometry. So there are other options in the rectangle tool. They're mainly to do with off-angle rectangles. So the first two lock the rectangles so that they align with the base planes, or the X and Y and Z axes. The others are to do with creating rectangles at an angle. So you can see there, that first point was one of the corners, second point defined the second corner and the angle which I wanted this rectangle at, and the third point was the one of the other opposite corners. And you can see it's not locked itself to align itself to any of the base planes, but it has put some relationships in here to ensure that it stays as a rectangle. So these two lines that are highlighted in pink stay perpendicular to each other, and these two lines stay perpendicular, and these two are parallel. So it ensures that it remains a rectangle, but its angle with respect to the original planes is purely down to you. You can set whatever angle you want. So the next tool is to create a similar sort of rectangle, but again, if we look at the icon here, it's showing us the center point is the first one that we're going to drop, a midpoint on one of the angled sides is the second, and then the third point is one of the corners. So we'll try that. Again, I'm going to lock it to the origin, but you don't have to. So that center point goes on the origin. I pull this line out to define a midpoint on one of the sides, and then this second point is one of the corners. So again, you create this angled rectangle, and it's put the necessary relations in to keep it as a rectangle, but its angle with respect to those base planes is entirely down to you. You can set that with the dimension or with a relation, but it'll always stay centered, this one. So there's a last tool in here which isn't strictly a rectangle, but it's within the same family, and it's the parallelogram, which again, if we look at the little icon up here, we've got the first point, which is obviously one of the outer points. We've got the second point, which is along the first side, and then we've got one of the points on the other side, which allows us to set this angle here. So we'll drop that. And again, it's put the necessary relations in there to keep these two sides of equal length to each other, and to keep these two sides of equal length to each other. So yeah, that's the parallelogram.